Welcome to the FCS Edge, where our September to remember has turned into an October with nothing to rhyme with. But that's okay because November and December are still lurking with rhyming. I'm Craig Haley of Stats Reform and TheAnalyst.com, joined by co-host Zach McKinnell of FCS Football Central and SI. How you doing today, Zach?
Good, Craig, man. It was a big weekend, and man, this upcoming week is insane. We had to expand our pick'em segment later in the show, and there's a ton of ranked matchups and a ton of matchups that might not be ranked matchups, Craig, but they're going to have massive conference title race implications.
Well, as you mentioned, conference play is our favorite time of the year. We're going to be talking fast starts. We'll have our week 6 picks. Coach Bobby Wilder of Tennessee Tech, head coach of the number 11 Golden Eagles, number 11 in the country. We're going to have him in our second segment as our special guest. Our producer is Graham Bell. And let's get right to it. Last week, our FCS game of the week, kind of a dud. Number 1, North Dakota State, 51-13 over then number 17, South Dakota. To me, it seems like we're on a collision course here for North Dakota State and South Dakota State. Talk about two teams that are just rolling. Is that inevitable that they're going to be in a 1-2 matchup?
It kind of seems like it. The one, can I offer one caveat? I don't know how they'll match up defensively to North Dakota State. And I think they're going to probably have trouble stopping Cole Payton in this offense because they're rolling right now offensively with how good Cole Payton's playing. But Southern Illinois is a sneaky game here in 2 weeks for the Bison, and I think to beat this team, you're going to have a special talent at quarterback, and DJ Williams is a very, very special talent there for the Salukis. That's the one caveat I would offer is if DJ Williams has a magnificent game, I think he could keep the Salukis close because they do have a kind of a unique defensive scheme. Maybe it gives the Bison a little bit of problems, but I'll tell you this, Craig, if they roll through Illinois State, they roll through Southern Illinois, I don't even know. I'll look ahead in the schedule. It's like if the Jacks can't get them, Craig, it looks like the Bison are headed back to the national championship game because I don't know about you, Craig. This team feels. I know last year's team was special, right? The 10th national championship team. This team has a different feel about it. And I look across and I've asked everybody this, and I challenge people to tell me right now, Craig, I don't know if we even know what their Achilles heel is up to this point because they've been so dominant.
Yeah, their precision has just been off the charts to start the year. But speaking of fast starts, Montana was in the other big game last week, 41-30 over Idaho, the Big Sky After Dark game. They've been on a roll too. We talked about Ayat, how well he's played at quarterback, Eli Gilman, and just the defense has been better. Here's a question for you though: the Grizz 8 home games, 4 to start the year. That's a lot. I believe it's the most ever for the regular season. Tennessee State is also playing 8 home games in the regular season. Should top 25 voters maybe dock the Grizz a little bit because they've only played at home at this point?
I personally wouldn't. Now, I will say maybe I did. Maybe I'm contradicting myself here, but that's one of the reasons I didn't move them to 2. I know a lot of Grizz fans talked about, hey, our resume is better than South Dakota State right now, right? Because of Sac State not that win not aging as well with Sac State's loss to Cal Poly this weekend. But I'll say this, I think going on the road in the Gold Rush game to Bozeman and knocking off Montana State, that's just a different level of win than winning 2 ranked games at home against Idaho and North Dakota. And that's no shot at the resume. It's still impressive. But I think, Craig, if they just handle business and do what they do, if they get to the last game of the year, the brawl, and they're sitting at 11-0, Craig, I really don't think it matters if they play 8 home games. If you're sitting at 11-0 and if they beat Montana State and they're sitting at 12-0, Craig, if the Bison slip up somewhere, it's going to be really hard not to argue Montana should be the number 1 team in the country. And we'll see what happens, but their schedule lays out nicely, and I don't really fault them for that. If you can find a way to make the schedule more advantageous for yourself, why wouldn't you? I would like to see more, like maybe. They scheduled Indiana State, right? They lose their starting quarterback before that game. Maybe that game's a more competitive game if they have their freshman All-American quarterback. But then you got the games like Sacred Heart. Maybe you wish they would have scheduled a little bit harder, but the schedule is what it is, man. If you go undefeated in this age of college football, Craig, it's impressive regardless of how many home games you had.
Great point. And the Grizz, they've gone past Montana State in our Stats Reform top 25. The Grizz are now 4. The Bobcats are now 5. It will work each other out. I do feel you want to see a tough road assignment. They're set up pretty well here moving forward, though, the Grizz. Now, here's another question about the poll, because there's three teams: Idaho at number 12, Abilene Christian at number 19, and South Dakota number 21. They're all 2 and 3, but they're all nationally ranked. Good programs, but sometimes you have to weigh how talented they are versus their record. How do you feel about this point of the season, a team with a losing record being in the top 25, and do you have some on your ballot?
Yeah, so I still have Idaho and Abilene Christian on my ballot. I don't have South Dakota ranked, and I know I was kind of outspoken about that. I really don't even see the argument to have South Dakota in the ballot. I don't even know if their talent. I don't even know if they have top 25 talent right now. Those losses have just been so much, Craig. I mean, the offensive line, the defensive line, multiple pieces at wide receiver. It's just it's tough, and I think Johansson can still turn it around. But man, he was just dealt a bad hand with that spring portal window, man. You practice all spring with this experienced offensive line, Craig, and then you dip. All of them leave. You lose your offensive line coach as well. People forget that, like how big that was losing the O line coach. But I think Idaho's still there for me, Craig, because both of their FBS losses were competitive. They're still 2-1 in FCS play. Same thing for Abilene Christian. I don't know how you wouldn't have them ranked. They have 2 ranked wins already. They lose to an incarnate word team that has kind of turned the corner since the quarterback change there. EJ Colson's playing outstanding. So I think both of those teams have proved their top 25 teams. Because Craig, a lot of the times I use FCS record to rank my teams, and then I'll just say, okay, well, this team's 3-0 against the FCS, and they have an FBS win. If that's the case, like a team like Tarleton, I can include their whole record because they have that FBS win, and that's just another extra positive for them. But a lot of the times I judge teams based on FCS record rather than overall record, especially this early in the season, because you have teams like, and I think we're going to get into it a little bit later with going into pick'ems and stuff, but there's a UT Martin team that was 0-4, but 3 of those losses were to FBS teams. And then the fourth loss, Greg, if it already went hard enough, you play Southern Illinois, who's one of the hottest teams in the country. So I think it's a case by case basis. But I think what it does is it puts pressure on the voters to really do their research, really watch the games, and it makes you. I would say it pushes you to have your football acumen in order so you can really tell the top 25 teams, because FBS voters don't have to deal with this, right, Craig? They're already voting it for the top teams. We have to say, okay, how did Idaho look against Washington State? They might have lost, but I thought they looked really impressive. How did they look against this next team? They looked really impressive. So I think that's the challenge for FCS voters. This is why you have to watch the games, because the box score and final scores and the overall records don't tell you the full story.
Yeah, Zach, I agree. I mean, I'm okay with the team with the losing record to be ranked, as long as there's a breaking point. If the season's moving on and a team suddenly 2-5, well, no, then you have to just look at that record and it just glares out at you. But I think I look at it as I have Abilene Christian in Idaho in my top 25. I have South Dakota outside, maybe top 30. But I'm okay if they're in the top 25. If I feel they're 30, well, then, it's not that far off. We always talk about 15 to 30, 15 to 35 are so similar. I mean, I look at it like a South Dakota. They're 2-3, but I would still think I'd still expect them to beat, say, a Presbyterian who's been tremendous. Maybe that's more of a toss-up game than than I might realize, but it wouldn't be surprising if the Coyotes beat the Blue Hose. So I just think they're all very similar. But I agree, you have to judge their resume. I like how you mentioned UT Martin and Incarnate Word. They're both below 500, but you have to look at their schedule. I think UIW could go on a roll. I've been riding their bandwagon all along, and I'm not going to jump off yet, but they do need to start winning. But UT Martin certainly had a great win over SEMO. So there are teams with losing records that are quality teams that are going to start picking it up. Now we're talking teams. Let's also talk individual players, because we're week 6. The 2 big awards individual in the FCS, the Walter Payton Award for FCS Offensive Player of the Year, the Buck Buchanan for FCS Defensive Player of the Year. Let's start out with the Walter Payton Award. Who's impressed you? Who are some of your favorites right now?
Man, does it? It's got to start and end with Derek Robertson, right? I mean, I think he was the preseason favorite. He's done nothing but continue to impress. What is it, like 18 passing touchdowns? He leads the country in yards right now, and he's played so well, Craig. And the thing with Derek is there's been quarterbacks in FCS history, right, Greg, that have put up the stats, but a lot of it's been system. Monmouth wasn't a offense where quarterbacks would come in and do this, and he's made some NFL level throws, and so I don't think he's just a system quarterback. Because and also too, I love his development and his story. Craig, me and you have covered the FCS for a while. Derek Robertson wasn't doing this at Maine. This isn't the same quarterback we saw before he got to Monmouth, man. So for the development to be there was huge. I look at DJ Williams as well. I think if Craig, if it this is the challenge for voters. Are we voting the best overall player? Are we voting the best statistical player? Or are we voting the most valuable player to their team? Because I think if you take DJ Williams off of Southern Illinois, Craig, I don't even know if they're a playoff team. He's that impactful to that offense with his legs and everything they can do schematically for him. And I got to give a shout out to our guy, Timothy Rosario, who's kind of dubbed him like he's not this player, but he's as impactful to Southern Illinois as like a Cam Newton was to Auburn, where he just raises the ceiling of that team so much. But then, Craig, it's hard not to look at a Cole Payton. I know me and you had high expectations. I know Bison fans had high expectations. Craig, I think he's exceeded his own expectations with how he's played this year. And again, man, I got a text from the same scout that reached out to me 2 weeks ago, and he said, I literally just want to take my day and watch Cole Payton film with how he's been playing. He said every single week he gets better. Craig, he made some outstanding throws. And when he gets out of the pocket and he just gets into the open field, he's just a difference maker, man. So those three guys would be my top ones. It's hard for a running back to get into it, Craig, and I understand that, but I don't know how you feel about it. There was a big debate for me this offseason when we did our top 10 running backs on who's number one. There's so many good running backs. Eli Gilman has just captured my attention this year, 135 yards per game. Montana always limits his carries in those junk time games. If he got the same amount of carries, Craig, as some of these other backs in the country, who knows how many rushing yards he'd have. I've been super impressed with Gilman, and he's a dark horse for that Walter Payton Award.
Yeah, if you're not talking quarterbacks, Eli Gilman is the one right now. I mean, he's leading the nation in rushing yards per game, as you mentioned, his big start. Wide receivers, you probably don't have somebody this year. And I think Trayvon Saunders at Colgate is statistically is the best player, receiving yards, receptions, but their team's not doing well. And it's another, level down to the Patriot League versus, playing in the Big Sky or the Missouri Valley. But yes, Eli certainly has taken his play to another level. Just fabulous start. The quarterbacks tend to win the Walter Payton Award. I think you've hit on all the right ones. You could probably throw in, Taron Dickens being back, but
I was gonna ask you, Craig, I mean, you've been doing this for a long time. Do you think Teron has any chance, or do you think missing those first 3 games has probably cost him the shot to win the award?
I don't think it's cost him a shot because of the way you're over 1,000 yards in 2 games, 10 touchdown passes, no interceptions. No, he can put himself, by having that kind of start, it puts him back in the conversation and everybody notices and starts paying attention again. So I think he is right there in the mix.
He's so good, and I said before the season, Craig, he reminds me of Lindsey Scott right before his breakout year. Like those 4 games last year looked like Lindsey Scott when he was at Nichols. And I think you're seeing that evolution of his game where he can really raise the ceiling. And one more dark horse name, Craig. I know we got to move on here. Do you think if Presbyterian wins out, could Colin Hurst put himself in the conversation?
It's hard for a school, from the Pioneer League to perhaps win, but maybe he's a top 3 finalist and gets to the announcement. I'm not saying he can't win. I'm just saying that it's a league that hasn't had a winner for the Payton, but phenomenal. I mean, you talk about most valuable. He's valuable to his team. So I'm glad you mentioned Colin Hurst. He's been tremendous at Presbyterian. All right, let's move on then to the Buck Buchanan Award, the FCS Defensive Player of the Year. Always a little more wide open. Voters in recent years have kind of looked to the tackles for loss and sacks kind of player, linebackers and defensive end. But there's always candidates from all levels of the defense. Who right now stands out in your eyes, Zach?
Again, it's the conversation of, are we voting for the best player, or are we voting for the best statistical player? Because a guy who me and you, I don't think many people even knew his name, Joshua Stone King at Furman, is having an insane year right now. I believe he's 10.5 tackles for loss, 6.5 sacks. But Greg, the two names that have stuck out to me, Andrew Zock at Mercer and Rex Connors at UC Davis. Like, those two players to me are two of the best overall players. And I think with Rex, he's going to have the tackles, right, Craig? But he's not really a ball hawking safety the way they use him in that defense. So the problem with him is, we've only had one defensive back win it. And it was one of the greatest corners of all time to come out of college football. And I believe he had 14 interceptions the one year he won it out of Bethune-Cookman. Rex isn't going to put that up. It's going to be a question of, can he get enough tackles for loss? Can he make those impactful plays in Big Sky play? I think Zock's on a trajectory right now, Craig, to probably take over this award. I think he has the name recognition. He was a freshman All-American. I think we even had him as an FCS All-American, even as a true freshman. He was a preseason All-American for everybody. With how Mercer is playing right now, he's the catalyst of this defense. And as big as the quarterback change has been, which Mercer might have 2 award winners, because that quarterback, Atkinson, might be the favorite for the Jerry Rice, which we're not going to talk about today. But Andrew Zock would probably be my pick right now, Craig, if I was projecting forward.
Yeah, the talent, when you come into your sophomore year and you're already your league's preseason player of the year, he was for the defense and the SoCon. Andrew Zock, I agree. He's building momentum. I'm glad you mentioned Joshua Stone King. I mean, Furman is back in the saddle, 3-1 kind of start here. They have a big game with ETSU this week and really need that win. But he's been, he's just gone from not even in the conversation to leading the nation in tackles for loss. He's had a great start. James Conway, I'm going to throw him in the mix, the Fordham linebacker. He's leading the nation in tackles per game, which, a stat right there that pops at you. But when you look at it, a career, and I think that factors in, it's not, yes, it's the player of the year, but also, that each year he's built. He passed 500 career tackles last week. 111. He's the 5th player to do that in the FCS since 2000. He's going to, zoom to the most throughout the year. I just think he has been so off the charts. 15 tackles here, 18 tackles there, 20 tackles there every week. Now, Fordham's having a down year, and they've had down 2 years, so that factors in as well. A guy like an Andrew Zock, who's leading a defending conference champion, you have to put a little more stock there as well when you're playing in big games all the time. But James Conway is certainly on everybody's list. So great talk for the fast starting teams, the fast starting players here with national awards. We're going to take a break here, and when we come back to the FCS Edge, we're going to have a fast starting coach, Bobby Wilder from Tennessee Tech. They're 4-0 and number 11 in our Stats Perform FCS Top 25. And as we go to break, we're going to take a look at the Week 5 players and teams of the week for Stats Perform. This is the FCS Edge. Welcome back to the FCS Edge. Zach and I are pleased to be joined by Coach Bobby Wilder of Tennessee Tech. They're 4-0, number 11 national ranking. They host Western Illinois this week. Coach, I think we're still all out of breath from Andrew Smith's 94-yard interception return against Tennessee State. Can you tell us about this fast start this year?
Yeah, first of all, thanks for having me on. And I'll say this, Craig and Zach, what you guys do for FCS football, we very much appreciate it here. The coverage is outstanding. The fast start has a lot to do with the end of last season and the disappointment of missing the playoffs by one game. Even though we were 6-2 in the league, tied for the championship, we were 7-5, and quite frankly didn't earn the right to go in. So the motivation for the last 11 months has been to compete for and win the conference championship. And we've got players, coaches, everybody associated with the program is just locked in behind it. We have a phrase within our program. We call it grab a shovel, jump in the ditch and dig. And what that means is it's a dirty job. You don't always get recognition. There's no job too small. Everybody, whatever it takes to lead to success on the field, do it. And everybody has embraced that mindset with this program.
Coach, me and you talked this all season. You know, we jumped on one of my other shows and we talked for about an hour about building a winning culture, getting the guys to buy in. How impressed have you been with your staff around you, though, man? Because we talked about the transfer portal class, and you said, I think we nailed these evaluations. And you see all these transfers from Kekoa at quarterback, from Andrew Smith, who we talked about his touchdown. How impressed were you with your staff evaluation and seeing these guys really go on the field and prove it?
Yeah, the number I can give you is 29. We took 29 players from the portal, 14 in January, 15 in May, and we hit on all 29. All 29 are contributing, playing, some like Kekoa Vesperis you mentioned, or Noah Robinson that just had a big game. You can look all throughout the roster, and all 29 are contributing, and that's a credit to our general manager, Justin McMullen, who's outstanding. Our coaching staff, as you guys know, when you're recruiting, you're competing. And you have to compete. And our President Oldham, who's supported us with revenue share, what we're able to do there to recruit some of the top talent to Tennessee Tech, the facilities guys. We've got a $60 million west side of the stadium that you can now see coming out of the ground. That's inspiring. Brand new locker room. Casey Fox, our new athletic director, who is the number 2 at Montana State, who clearly has a blueprint. If you look at what Montana State's done, especially in the last 6 years with their program, their facilities. So everybody's just gotten behind this. And that recruiting piece, as you guys know, I learned this after getting fired at Old Dominion. You're not a very good coach if you don't have the best talent. You become a better coach, and your job security is a little bit better if you can have talented players around you. And we've certainly been able to start that process here at Tennessee Tech.
Coach, speaking of process, tell us about the transfer portal. How fast does it work once a player enters the transfer portal?
Yeah, that's a great question, Craig. It is warp speed. First of all, you have to have knowledge of players who may enter the portal. So, for example, our general manager, Justin McMullen, our scouting department, we're studying everybody in America, especially the G5 FCS of players, their numbers this year. So when somebody hits the portal, we've already done our background information. And the example I'll give you is from the movie Moneyball, trying to get everything down to one number, their PFF grade, their rep count, their productivity, and then you got to have a dollar amount in mind of what is that player's value based on your rankings. So we're already doing that, Craig, in anticipation of the one portal period in January, not having the opportunity potentially in May with that second portal period. So advanced scouting, studying other teams, and getting, even though we're in season right now and chasing the dream, we're already focused on January.
Coach, what's one positional group on the team that has even outperformed your high expectations coming into the year?
Yeah, the defensive line with a 1A to the offensive line. And we traveled 17 defensive linemen to Tennessee State. We played 16. And what we're trying to do right now, guys, is we're trying to just continue to run fresh players at the opponent. When you watch our rotations in the D-line, every 3 plays, here comes a new group. So the recruiting, the development by Sam Williamson, who's one of the best D-line coaches in America. And then offensive line-wise, we've got a really solid 5 right now. We're developing depth. Those guys are playing well. And when I look at it this way, guys, when you evaluate a D-line and an O-line, how are you on rush defense? How are you rushing the ball? Well, in the Tennessee State game, they had 33 carries for 49 yards. We had 281 yards rushing. So that always starts up front. Those guys are the heart and soul of the program.
Coach, you mentioned earlier about the offseason being kind of motivated, didn't make the playoff. You said your team didn't do enough to make the playoffs. selection committee felt that way last year and took the other three champions from the OVC Big South. Did your program feel that way at that time, or even now looking back?
No, we realistically, Craig, and I said this right after the season, we didn't earn the right to get to postseason. Even though we were on a 5-game winning streak, and all of a sudden we started to receive votes. We started the year 2-5. We lost at Middle, at Georgia, who was number 1, got 12 players hurt, lost a starting quarterback, and had a 2-5 start. And then when we got healthy, boy, we really started to play good football. But that was such great motivation for everybody, me included, all the staff, the president, everybody involved, that we're that close. What more do we need to do to build the program? And we're extremely focused on the process of winning. That's our planning, preparation, execution. Everything that I presented to President Oldham, who's such a visionary. I mean, guys, this is one of the few 4-year institutions in America that is growing in attendance. We're up to 11,000 students now. We're one of the top academic institutions in the South. This guy's a visionary, and he badly wants to win at football. So the support for the coaching staff. We've got 35 people on our staff, Craig. We act more like an FBS program in terms of general manager, scouting department, operations people, strength and conditioning. He invested in that. He also invested in the players, the rev share. He invested in the coaching staff. So salary-wise, I could recruit and retain the top coaches that we could possibly have at FCS. So everybody has been motivated, Craig, by missing that opportunity to compete in the 2014 championship tournament.
You guys made headlines with the addition of Kekoa, and we talked when you were on the show earlier this year about his development throughout spring practice and going into summer. What have you seen over the first 4 games, and how where's his ceiling at, man? Because it's only 4 games in this system. How good can he be later this year as he continues to develop?
Yeah, being a quarterback myself, longtime quarterback coach, the number one thing, guys, that jumps out with him is his leadership, his presence on the field, how the other players look at him. Remember, this program has been pretty decent on defense the past few years, but hasn't produced on offense. Even how the defensive kids look at him, his ability to lead. And then he's so accurate. I mean, you guys know this. He led the nation last year in completion percentage at Eastern Washington, a team that was 4-8. And he's doing similar things now with our program. He's such a good leader. He's so accurate. He's so in command of the game plan that Brian Scott, our offensive coordinator, feels comfortable giving him different packages during the game, and our guys absolutely love playing for him.
Zach and I are joined by Coach Bobby Wilder of Tennessee Tech. Outstanding start at 4-0. Coach, your team has not trailed in a game. You know, every win has been 27 or more points. What do you see in your team that gives you confidence that they'll respond in the way you want when adversity hits your team?
Yeah, that's a good point, Craig. We talk about that. What are we going to do the first time we get punched in the mouth? And the mindset and the aggressive attitude we have has been so good. I'll give you an example. We just had a team meeting, and on Tuesday we do our grab a shovel player of the week. That's a skill guy effort. And then Wednesday's the heavyweight division effort. So the number one thing we focus on right now, guys, is effort. And the 2 plays we use this week in a 176 play game were play 174 and 175. That effort looked the same as play 1. Now, we need to keep improving on the execution. We didn't execute well in the second half in this game. A lot of credit to Tennessee State, continuing to play with just that incredible effort, with toughness. And that's, to me, how you build a winning culture, is when you promote effort on the field and all 11 giving great effort. And that's an area we've grown in as a program. The other thing, Craig, we've grown in is last year we had about 50 players that played in games that helped us tie for a conference championship. This year we're playing 80 players. So the depth, the guys on special teams now, we don't have to use the offensive and defensive starters. We got kids that are fighting to get on the bus every week. They're fighting to get on the field, and that leads to better performance and effort. Our number one focal point this week with Western Illinois is attention to detail. Everybody in this program is very mindful that that's the last team that beat us 11 months ago. We've been on a 9-game winning streak. We played poorly out at Western Illinois last year, and everybody is focused on the fact that's the last team that beat us, and we need to beat them at home this weekend.
Coach, I see your tweets every week about you guys are just locked in on the process of winning, right? You try not to let the outside noise seep in. How do you keep your guys locked in? Because it's really hard, Coach, not to go on social media and see the graphics about the win streak, to see the rankings continue to rise, see the domination. How do you keep your guys locked in on that process?
Yeah, great question. The number one philosophy of this program is to stay focused on the process of winning. And think about those three words: focus, process, winning. Those are powerful words. And each week, starting Sunday, we're all in the planning phase together. During the week is preparation. Then Saturday at noon is the execution. So staying locked in on what we're trying to accomplish as a program. The other thing, guys, that helps is we've got 41-year players. I've been doing this for 34 years. I've never had a team that's this veteran. And you've got guys that have been in this program. About half of them have been here and have never won before. The other half are coming from other programs where, quite honestly, they weren't successful. So that ability as a head coach to talk to a mature adult that is a college football player, and for them to understand that we've got 52 days left in the regular season. Can everybody stay focused on the process of winning, keep stacking wins, and then keep evaluating ourselves? Are we getting better each week as a football team? And it's such a joy as a head coach to have a veteran team.
Coach, you mentioned the FCS games early last year, and this year you play Kentucky later in the season, November 15th, I believe it is.
Yes.
You were at Old Dominion when you were both an FCS and an FBS program.
Right.
Why is it that when as an FBS program, it sometimes it feels like those players, no matter what they're told, they don't take the FCS seriously when those games come about and some of these upsets arise? How does that happen, especially because you coached that program on both levels? How does that happen?
Yeah, that's a good question. There's such a gap, as you guys know now, between P4, even G5, and FCS. For example, we go to Georgia last year. They're number one in the nation. Their payroll's about $30 million at the time. Our athletic department budget was $17 million. So the gap is so big right now between those two. And when I talked to President Oldham after the season, we were scheduled this year, guys, to be 5 home, 7 away again. We were supposed to open at James Madison and then play again at Kentucky. And when the president and I sat down and said, look, if we're going to build a winning program, a winning culture, we can't play 2 money games a year. And you look at our league, just look at the OVC. There's 5 teams playing 2 money games early in the year. Look what happened to UT Martin. I mean, they got to go to Oklahoma State, UTEP, and then Missouri State. I'm sure when they scheduled it wasn't FBS, but that's 3. And that's a good football team. That's a good coach. Jason Simpson's as good a coach as anybody in the country. Won or tied the last 4 league titles. So philosophically as a program, what are you going to do? And the approach we took here is let's give up one of those money games. I'll raise the money. My coaching staff will raise the money. We'll change the gap in that. I think, and maybe you guys would agree with me, the Big Sky does the best job of scheduling. Those guys aren't playing multiple money games every year. Same thing with the Missouri Valley. And then look how good those conferences are. About 15 years ago, guys, when I was at Old Dominion and we were FCS, you had the CAA, you had James Madison, Richmond, Villanova won national championships. We were a top 10 team. And then all of a sudden it all shifted out west. The investment by the Dakotas, the Montanas into program, into their facilities. You know, they're state schools, so it's a little bit different. They get a big piece of the pie. But the point I'm making, that whole thing shifted when they invested in their programs and started scheduling smartly. And you can see the difference now in that. And we're trying to build that same model here at Tennessee Tech. Be more like the Missouri Valley, be more like the Big Sky. You know, we study their teams, we study their height, their weight, what they look like, how they're building their program, because that's what we're trying to replicate is those programs, the winning culture, the winning scheduling model, and the investment into winning in our football program.
Coach, my last question, and we talked about this. You talked about studying those Missouri Valley programs, Big Sky programs. A big thing that I know me and Craig have talked about on the show is depth. Especially, you talked about it in the trenches, but you also talked about running the football and being able to do both. Do you feel like you and your staff have done? Is this the team that is built to make a postseason run, in your opinion, based on what you've seen so far with the depth and with the experience?
Yeah, that's remained to be seen with, as you guys know, that's 52 more days, 8 games, injuries, anything could happen. But to answer your question, Zach, yes, this team has been built to, number one, win the Ohio Valley Conference, starting up front, offensive and defensive line, and how we play. And then number two, if we're fortunate enough to get to postseason, you're going to have to go west eventually, because those teams are the top 4 teams in the country. And you throw Tarleton State in there, but normally it's the Dakotas, Montana. For people that don't know, in the last 14 years, North Dakota State's won 10 national championships. South Dakota State's won 2. And then JMU and Sam Houston moved up. So the Dakotas are running it. Montana State's closed ground. Bobby Houck, who's a good friend of mine, has got a really good team going this year and having 8 home games, as I said to Bobby. Smart. But those teams run it out west, and anybody that's going to go east, from east to west, and try to beat them, you have to build a similar team. I remember watching last year, guys, Tennessee Martin, right? We beat them 10-9 at the end of the year. Martin goes to the playoffs, rolls New Hampshire 41-10 in the first round, then has to go to Montana State and loses 49-17. Well, the disparity at the line of scrimmage was just so revealing to all of us in this program. We had to get bigger, we had to get longer, because you can't match up with those teams if you don't look the same coming out of the tunnel. Now, obviously, your skills got to get better at all positions because they're well skilled. But there's a formula those teams out west have that they win with. And until somebody matches that formula, all the championships are going to stay out west.
Coach, last one here. You mentioned earlier talking about academics off the field. Your program, your school is going to join the Southern Conference next year. Leaving the OVC after 75 plus years. Can you talk about the excitement of the move, also the difficulty of leaving a conference that you know so well and been a big part of?
Yeah, the biggest thing, Craig, it came down to, you look, number one, at geography. Tough travel in the OVC. We got to hop on a charter flight to go to Charleston, South Carolina next week. Western Illinois got to hop on a charter flight to come to us. And, I was part of the hypocrisy when we screwed this thing up about 15 years ago. We moved up at Old Dominion. And if you guys remember, the leagues used to be based on geography. There were bus trips and you had some rivalries. Well, moving to the Southern Conference, 7 of the 9 teams in the conference we're joining are within a 250-mile radius. And it's not just for football. We have 15 sports here that have to travel. And now for the other 14 sports, their travel just got easier. When we talk about the student-athlete experience, 3 to 4 hour bus trips are much better than an 8 or 10 hour bus trip for those kids. So that was a big part of it. The reputation of the Southern Conference was also a big part of it in terms of our president making the decision to join that for all the sports. But a big one for me, guys, is the geography. We played Chattanooga this year. They're 97 miles from our campus. It was similar to playing Tennessee State, and there's a bunch of schools that are a short bus ride and a couple right here in Tennessee.
Well, Coach Bobby Wilder of Tennessee Tech, we appreciate your time today learning about your program. You talked about at some point you got to go west in the playoffs. Maybe one of those Big Sky or Missouri Valley conferences will be coming to you because you're 4-0 and your team's on a roll.
I hope so. I hope we can make it to the playoffs and get an opportunity to play them, because I got so much respect for those teams. And thanks for having me on, guys. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Coach Wilder. We're going to take a break from the FCS Edge. When we come back, Zach and I will have our Week 6 pick'em. This is the FCS Edge. Welcome back to the FCS Edge. Zach and I are back in black if you're watching on YouTube right now. And here we are in our pick'em segment for Week 6. Where's the season going? We're on Week 6, Zach. Let's get started with our Stats Reform FCS Game of the Week. Montana State, number 5, at number 13, Northern Arizona, who's on a roll at home, 9 straight home wins. The Lumberjacks have a chance here. Who you like, Zach?
Yeah, I'm going to still roll with Montana State. This one was actually a little bit tougher than I expected just because of Todd Pennington, man. We talk about game changers in our first segment today. Todd Pennington is a game changer. He's improved since being the Big Sky Newcomer of the Year last year. But my question is, defensively, I don't think NAU matches up very well with Montana State's offense. We haven't seen the same explosiveness but that Montana State still has so much talent offensively, and Lampson is starting to kind of find his rhythm, and I think that could be dangerous. And it feels like it's only a matter of time before Julius Davis or Adam Jones really finds the rhythm in the rushing attack. The offensive line is getting healthier. I'm gonna go with Montana State here, Craig. I think they get it done on the road, but this is going to be a huge test for the Bobcats because Flagstaff is a really, really tough place to go and win.
I like you mentioned Davis and Jones. They haven't had that breakout game, yet the Bobcats still have 4 straight games over 200 rushing yards, all against FCS opponents, including against South Dakota State. So yeah, all it's going to take is that one game where they just totally explode. So yeah, I'm going to go with the Bobcats on the road as well. But terrific matchup. You got to give NAU a shot here. All right, North Dakota State, number 1 ranked, 4-0. 3-1, Illinois State, number 6. I would think, a number 6 team could give the Bison a shot here, or give them a chance to pull an upset. But 13 in a row here, the Bison just sort of rolling at all times. They won last year at Illinois State 42-10. They're back in normal Illinois this year. I'm going to go with the Bison, but I would hope it's a great game.
I mean, we call this the FCS Edge. We have to be honest here, Craig. I don't know. I don't think this one's going to be very competitive. College football is all about matchups, and it's no disrespect to Illinois State. They're still a good team. North Dakota State is so leaps and bounds ahead of a lot of teams in the country. And the one drawback this preseason, me and you talked about it for me, for Illinois State, is they always fail to deliver in these games. They're competitive and win a lot of those mid-level or even games, but when they go up against the elite teams, Craig, they really fail to make those games as competitive as they should be. And I don't like the matchup because the secondary is young and they have allowed a lot of passing yards. And you have a red hot Cole Payton, you have a red hot receiving core with Bryce Lance and Rajah Nelson. I don't love the matchup. I think North Dakota State wins this one convincingly.
Yeah, we were talking earlier about Cole Payton, but if you're a defense and has to stop that receiving core, I mean, the number 5 guy would be number 1 on many FCS teams, including within the Missouri Valley Conference. So yes, I'm going to go with the Bison as well. All right, let's look across in the Missouri Valley Conference. Number 2, South Dakota State, also 4-0. At number 24, Youngstown State, another team that probably thinks they have a shot here at home. Who do you like?
Yeah, I actually think Youngstown State could be an interesting matchup for South Dakota State. You talk about dynamic quarterbacks giving defenses a little bit of problems. Bo Brungard is the ultimate dynamic weapon with his legs. The one question I have, though, is South Dakota State's been so good against the run. Linebackers are so athletic. They can play sideline to sideline. The defensive line has been better than expected, I think, for a lot of people. If Brungard's rushing ability is taking away, Craig, do you trust his arm to win you this game against the South Dakota State secondary that's been really, really good? That's going to be the question here in this game. I think I'm still going to go with South Dakota State, but if Brungard can get the power run game going and get out in open space and make some plays, they could make this game interesting at home, but I still got to go with the Jacks here.
Yeah, Brungard, they held him in check last year. If I remember, it was like 15 carries, 65 yards, and a touchdown. They rolled. I'm going to say they stop him as well, the Jackrabbits, with the win. All right, one more top 25 matchup. Number 16, West Georgia, 5-0 at Austin Peay, who's had a great season, 3-2, but played a tough schedule. They're number 22. Who do you like here?
I feel like, yeah, listen, I'm on the most wanted list in Carrollton, Georgia right now because I just, the schedule laid out so bad. I picked them to lose 2 weeks ago. They proved me wrong when they beat ETSU. I said, man, they're on upset alert last week, which it was a 3-point game. That was a bad call by me. But this week again, Craig, I just feel like it's setting up eventually, and West Georgia's just going to have to keep proving me wrong. Shout out to their AD who gives me a hard time about the picks. I'm still going to go Austin Peay, Craig. I think Chris Parson is playing excellent football right now, and I think this might be one of the better defenses that West Georgia's seen all year. I really like what the Govs do defensively, and it just feels like they've been teetering. They're winning some of these close games lately that it's really hard to go and win on the road, Craig. You go all the way to Utah last week, then you got to get right back on the road and go up to Clarksville, which is a really tough place to play. I think Austin Peay gets it done and pulls off the upset.
Well, the outlaw Zach McKinnell is always a wanted man in Carrollton, so I'm gonna agree with you. I'll go with Austin Peay at home, and I'm only picking it because West Georgia, they have to be a tired team against this schedule. They go to Southern Utah. Here they are back on the road against a tough Austin Peay. It's a great matchup. I think it either way. You look at it as not much of an upset whoever wins. So I'm going to go with Austin P at home. All right, let's look at CAA football. This is a big one, I think. Villanova at New Hampshire, only because both teams, whoever loses, will have a third loss. You can't rack up too many here. With the Ivy League you mentioned earlier this season, how they'll take away an at-large bid. So you can't have too many. And the CAA could be a year, maybe just 3 teams. Maybe they'll get 4 in the playoffs. But this is a big one. I just think it has huge playoff implications. I'm going to go with the Wildcats at home.
Yeah, I like Villanova at home. I think a lot of people's perception of this team might be a little bit skewed. I just think they ran into a really bad matchup in Monmouth, a really hot Monmouth team. I like Villanova to get back on track at home this weekend.
Another great game. Southland, Stephen F. Austin at UIW. Now, these were the top 2 teams in the preseason poll. That league is so deep with title contenders for the conference title. Here's another game that I think is huge playoff implications because UIW already 3 losses. They don't want to go to 2-4. Stephen F. Austin 3-2, but a third loss would be hurtful because they also played the sub FCS game that doesn't count on their playoff resume. It's a huge matchup for both teams. I'm going to go with UIW at home.
Yeah, this Incarnate Word team is just different, Craig. And also, we forgot to mention him during the Buck Buchanan segment. Declan Williams is playing out of his mind right now at edge rusher for the Cardinals. EJ Colson has been such a game changer for them. The rushing attack was rolling last week. I like Incarnate Word at home. And like you said, Craig, this is a must win for them. If they drop to 0-2 in conference play, their season's over because they're probably out of the race for the auto bid and they're not getting in at large bid with another loss. And so this is a must win for Incarnate Word. I think if Stephen F. Austin drops this game and then they go on a run, there's still maybe a little bit of hope depending on how the bubble shakes out for them to get in. I think Incarnate Word's desperate. They get the win this weekend.
The team that beat UIW to start the year was Nichols. They haven't won since, and they're at Lamar, nationally ranked 2020 in our top 25 poll. That's a big game in the Southland. Who do you like here?
Yeah, I'm going to go against my gut here. I'm a little bit worried about the passing attack for Lamar. I know they've had some quarterback injuries, but Craig, I want to say they rank second to last in passing offense right now, but they just keep finding ways to get it done, man. That defense plays well. They get the rushing attack going. I think Lamar gets it done at home. I think Nichols has regressed since week 1. They had that really big win, and it's just been tough down the stretch here. So I like Lamar to get the win this weekend.
Well, I'm waiting for that Nichols team to show up again, the one that beat UIW. I'm going to go with Lamar. Just a tough game all around. I do think Nichols could pull the upset, though. And here's another game. We mentioned earlier about Furman. They're hosting ETSU, a big game in the SoCon. Each week in our Pick'em segment, we pick these games that could go either way most of the time. Drive ourselves crazy. This would be one. I'm just going to go with Furman at home. They've been impressive, but this one I could stay up all night flip flopping back and forth who I pick.
Yeah, I think I'm going to go with ETSU. I guess with kind of the ups. I don't know if anyone would call it an upset, but I like ETSU here. Last week, man, they had that Mercer game locked up going into the 4th quarter and just fell apart. McNamara played really well at times last week. I think this ETSU team's due for a win. I'm gonna take ETSU over Furman.
All right, we're working overtime here. We usually go 8 games in our pick'em. We're up to number 9 out of 10. Prairie View A&M. 2-0 in the West SWAC West. Here they are going to Alcorn. Alcorn, 0-4. We're not used to seeing that. I'll let you go first on this one.
Oh, man, this is just one of those gut picks. I think Alcorn's been on the road all year long. They were so close to getting that first win last week against Arkansas Pine Bluff. I'm going to go with Alcorn with the upset here at home. It's tough to go win on the reservation. I don't know if you've been, Craig. It's real deep in the woods there, and so I'm going to go with Alcorn with the upset at home.
Yeah, they haven't been 0-4 since 2007. I just think Prairie View's running game has been a little deep where they can throw different guys at Alcorn. So I'm going to go with Prairie View on the road here in this one. All right, final one. Let's go at a conference. Yale 2-0 at number 9 Lehigh, which is 5-0, best start since 2012 for the Mountain Hawks. So we're going to lose an undefeated team this week. They're 11 going in. Who do you like here?
This was one of those 50-50 games for me. I really like what Yale has looked like on the field this year. Reno at quarterback has really changed the trajectory of that offense. But man, Lehigh is playing so well. They're hitting their stride. I know Jaden Green got a little bit banged up last week, so a little bit worried there. But this offense has been complete. I like Caden Johnson's development. The defensive line's played well. I'm gonna go Lehigh in a close one at home, getting it done.
Yeah, it is a fun matchup. It wouldn't be too much of an upset if Yale can beat Lehigh. Josh Pitzenberger, 3 touchdowns rushing in both games so far. You know, there's no red shirt year in the Ivy League, but if there's ever a player I feel like they've been there forever, it's Joshua Pitzenberger just getting it done for the Bulldogs. I'm going to go with you. I'm going to go with Lehigh at home, but I do think this is another kind of toss-up game that we drive ourselves nuts on trying to get right. So week 6, big week ahead, Zach. What are you looking forward to the most?
Oh man, I gotta get another TV with all these ranked matchups this weekend, and I'm excited, man. Again, every week offers a little bit more clarity. These conference races are ramping up, and we talked about what makes the FCS great a few weeks ago is these conference races, and there's so many good games that could go either way, and it changes it skews our perception one way or the other, man. So just enjoy the ride, man. And I'm looking forward to this weekend, man, because I think we're going to learn a lot of important data about a ton of top teams and a bunch of teams that are looking to break into the top 25 potentially.
I'll tell you what I learned this week, and Coach Bobby Wilder at Tennessee Tech, he pointed out that their last loss was against the team they're playing this week, Western Illinois, which I had forgotten. So they're taking a 9-game winning streak into that one. That was a great conversation. So we want to thank Graham Bell, our producer. We want to thank our listeners and watchers here of the FCS Edge. We know it's a great week of games. We look forward to talking to you again next week, and we will see you soon on the FCS Edge.